It's Spoilerin time, and this week we watched the worst episode of The West Wing ever. That's what we do on Spoilerin time. We watch the first, the best, the worst, and the last. At least that's what we're doing with The West Wing. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Dude, Tom, I think we have discovered pure gold in this formula. Like, I know it was by accident, and I know it was inspired by a lyric from an Apple TV original show called After Party. I fell apart like the West Wing after Sorkin left, but by golly, I think we've really uncovered some gold because we watched the first episode of a very successful long-running series. The pilot we thought was great. We watched the best episode. Spoiler alert, it was great. I had no idea who died or why the president was arguing with God, but I'm like, I'm glad you went to a beautiful cathedral and there's wonderful cinematography to go along with it. And then I gotta be honest, I was really dreading today's experience of watching the worst episode. But guess what, Tom?
What, Brian?
It was the best episode I've seen yet.
So you liked it more than Two Cathedrals?
Yes, because it didn't expect me to know anything about any characters. It was an independent, standalone, beautiful piece of work. Now, for those who don't know, The West Wing is about the cast of characters who support the president, and the president shows up from time to time. But in this case, the president is barely in it, and it's a standalone piece, like a kind of a side episode about the press secretary, and they lean in so heavy in a time before it was fashionable to do so, to the whole like, hey, just so you know, we're doing NPR or we're doing PBS or whatever. It's like,
yeah, underwritten by a grant from these fictional people,
right? And viewers like you. And then
but it wasn't viewers like you. It was
they intentionally changed it, right? So but it was close enough, right?
Right.
And so we they also do little things like when they get to the ad breaks, they call them out, which is something you would never do on the West Wing.
After the break, which you also on public television, you would never break.
Exactly. They're like, coming up. Like, I don't know. It was kind of all over the map, but it was a spoiler alert. I liked it. I want to get your impressions before I chime in on the stuff that I liked a lot about it.
I was dreading this as well, for multiple reasons, because, I really liked the first two, and I was like, well, this is going to be the worst. Then all of a sudden my good impression of the West Wing is going to go away. Plus it means I have to spend 40 plus minutes watching something bad, right? That's the negative of assigning ourselves this homework for you. I also watched it and was like, I don't see why this is bad. And it reminded me a bit of an episode of MASH, where I believe the doctor, the psychologist, is doing a documentary. So he's filming a documentary, and a lot of it's in black and white because of that. Of course, that's set in the 1950s, so it's more newsreel style. This is set in the 1990s, or I guess early 2000s by this point. So it's more cable television, public broadcasting style, but the premise was the same. Like, this is a faux documentary of what actually happened. I thought sometimes that maybe the plot was a little trumped up, to be like, oh, we're going to have, this horrible terrorist confrontation, this Waco, Ruby Ridge style confrontation just happens to happen on this day. But it's television. If that's the worst I'm going to say, it's like, well, would you rather have had a boring story, Tom? Like, so I looked at it and I was like, I get why, if I really loved The West Wing and I loved what they did every week, that at this later date, so season 5 out of 7, they change that and they don't give me what I'm normally expecting, I might not like it. But on the whole, having only watched 2 episodes, I felt like this is just a different lens to see the same interactions and the same manipulations. And granted, we follow CJ a lot more than we might, but there are episodes of television shows that follow particular characters closer than other times. And I thought it was well done.
I think that that is the gift of this bizarre method of approaching series, is that we get to see first impressions exactly as everybody else got to see them. We get to watch upon and see as standalone what everybody likes the most. But I never expected this part to be the gift. I thought that we would be kind of cackling and throwing tomatoes at people. I thought we'd be covered in marinara by now.
Yeah, this was not funny or eye rolly any more so than The West Wing has been so far. Like, some of it does take itself too seriously, but that's kind of what the show is.
Well, and it was so inspiring to me that I ended up I'm trying to write a book on branding and marketing stuff, and I realized that I was like, why on earth would anybody rate this as the worst episode of a primetime series? Because it was riveting to me. And I realized, oh, well, I don't know. Let's say you wanted a Coke and you went to a vending machine and you pressed the Coke button and Mountain Dew came out. Now, let's say you even like Mountain Dew, but that wasn't what you asked for. You pressed the Coke button and instead you got Mountain Dew. Then I would imagine you'd be pretty upset. And so I think that's all the hate on this episode boiled down to. It was, in fact, I challenge anybody who has never seen the show. If you've never seen a single episode of The West Wing ever, I challenge you to, what is it? Season 5, episode 18?
Yeah. Called Access.
Just go straight to Access and just watch it and tell us what your experience is. Tell us, does this look like the worst episode in the entire series of a 6-series, multiple Emmy-winning show?
It feels like the kind of thing that is entirely situational. Like, oh, Sorkin left. Well, now it's going to go downhill, so I'm going to start looking for signs it went downhill. Oh, it's a documentary episode. A lot of television shows have tried those as filler, maybe even their clip shows, which this was not a clip show at all. But you know what I mean? Like, people start building up their prejudices and then decide that it's the worst without giving it an objective view. Or maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're just missing something. Maybe this is a horrible episode, Brian, and we're Philistines. I'm willing to accept, at least for me, that might be the case. But I didn't see it. I still don't think it was better than Two Cathedrals, simply because you had more powerful themes in Two Cathedrals to deal with.
Well, that's you definitely
not every story is going to have the most powerful themes. That's just not the way television goes.
You definitely get the sense very early on that this is an episode. It's like the documentary of, I don't know, Gollum or whatever. It's like, this is somebody who it is very clear, even from the outside, knowing that this is a fairly minor character, that they're...
But it's not. CJ is one of the main characters of The West Wing all the way through. I do know that much.
But I get the impression that she's not very beloved. Not like Bartlett. It's like when Bartlett shows up, all of a sudden
is never that's normal. He was in this almost the least of any we've watched, but apparently the key was that Bartlett would never be in an episode a lot. This was always about the behind the scenes players, not the president himself.
Yeah, in that case, America, you done goofed. You weren't ready for this. It was too good for you and is wasted on you. America, get your head on straight.
Or maybe that's just how good The West Wing was. It was like, well, if we're going to pick a worst one, I guess it's that one, but that one isn't even bad.
There does have to be, like technically by the numbers, there has to be a least best episode of a show.
Yeah, and maybe that's all this is.
Also, people are pointing out in the chat that we should question the IMDb ratings, which also maybe that's the real friends we made along the way is figuring out that you shouldn't look at the IMDb ratings.
Except we didn't look at the IMDb ratings alone for this one. We also looked at Screen Rant and a bunch of other places that put this on their list as either the worst or among the worst episodes. So there was some subjective bearing out of those ratings as well.
It was so good, Tom. Oh, and I must admit, I personally have a bias.
Everybody's saying CJ is beloved too, so I don't know. Maybe we're wrong about that.
Okay, well, as a matter of fact, among those people are Annalisa, who is on our production team. So I would assume that Annalisa would also be affectionate to the fact, all of the live on screen, like color corrections and the color charts and the clap slates and all of that stuff, and the hey, wait, are you mic'd? Do we have releases on them and all of that stuff? Like, oh my gosh, that was one of the beautiful parts that.
I was going to say, one of the other things that I found in reading up, because I went reading like, why is this the worst again? Apparently, a lot of people didn't like mixing in real footage from like previous real administrations and even a couple of interviews with actual past press secretaries.
Oh no, I loved that. I loved that. Where it's like they go straight to film footage of him saying, well, this is different now, isn't it? I guess there's new rules.
And there's a flak jacket with notes, which is apparently a real thing that started in
the I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah. I do. Okay, so here's one real criticism, Brian. See if you can dismiss this away. They said it after the end of the series. Remember, at the very beginning, they say, we were not allowed to release this until the end of Bartlett's second term. We're in the middle of Bartlett's second term at this point, right? So we're showing events that are in sequence with the other episodes that they're airing, but it's saying that it came out after this term, which doesn't really matter because everything happens in sequence, except at the end when they say CJ went on to become the only press secretary to serve 2 full terms. And then in season 7, apparently they promote her to chief of staff, so she doesn't finish the term as press secretary.
Oh, so they okay, all right. If continuity is your jam, then that would be unfortunate. But to be honest, like a loud announcement that hey, this is outside of the current series you're watching, it couldn't have been done better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't know why you have to do it that way. It seemed, I guess maybe for the plausibility of a current administration would never allow the kind of access they gave that camera person to air this.
Yeah, the behind the scenes during a terrorist crisis kind of access.
Yeah, the one where Agent Coulson is like, I
forgot about it. Agent Coulson's showing up. It took me 15 more minutes to watch the episode because I had to figure out whether or not that was Agent Coulson or not.
That was really him or not. Yeah, and he's playing Agent Coulson. Like,
yes. Only a smarmy, mean version of Agent Coulson.
Yeah, exactly the same. It's amazing. I got nothing bad to say about the worst episode of The West Wing.
I will say that if you're up for it, Tom, I would like to make this kind of our regular jam. Is first episode, last episode, best rated, worst rated.
First, best, worst, last.
Because it was a transformative moment for me to realize that just because something is rated the worst doesn't make it the worst or even objectively bad in any way.
I have been told West Wing is an amazing television show. I had believed it was an amazing television show. And watching those first episode and the best episode certainly didn't do anything to dissuade me from the idea that it might be a great television show, but this clinched it. I'm like, if this is your worst episode, this must be a great series.
If you can't handle me at my access, then you don't deserve my pilot.
My 7 cathedrals. Yeah.
My 2 cathedrals.
2 cathedrals. I made it 7. Why did I make it 7?
If you can't handle me at my access, you don't deserve my 2 cathedrals.
All right, folks. We do need a nomination for the next show that we want to do this to. So let us know.
I guess we'll talk about it in after talk. There's a few nominations that now that we have a format that we could do every month, we could do this for another series. Like I ain't seen Newhart. I ain't seen all of Cheers. I ain't seen
Cheers would be fascinating,
right? So anyway, MASH, all of that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Send it to us, cordkillers@gmail.com. And of course, next week we finish up the foursome with the finale. We will watch the last episode, episode 22 of season 7 tomorrow. Don't forget to support us at patreon.com/cordkillers. You get this episode before other people if you do that. Patreon.com/cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next time. Yeah.